So, you've been dating someone for several weeks. It seems to be going well. Messages are consistent and engaging. And then something suddenly seems to shift. Maybe plans get canceled for a legit reason, but then not immediately rescheduled. And you're left thinking, what the fuck? I thought we were connecting and this was moving forward. Am I getting ghosted? Maybe you lean on your friends and end up feeling worse after. They've talked you into writing the offending person off, which feels empowering for a minute. However, you still can't quite stop thinking about what went wrong, but you don't want to address it with the person you're dating and come off as needy. Well, my friends, this is what I'm excited to get into with you today. This scenario happens to all of us, this moment that so many people hit in early dating. It's the moment where the rhythm, which felt steady and predictable, suddenly shifts. The moment where your nervous system wakes up, looks around, and goes, wait, what's happening? Should I be worried? Today we're talking about that moment, the dip, the space, the contraction that every early connection goes through, and what it brings up inside of you. You're listening to Stripped, Drop Your Patterns. You ready? Let's get into it. Throw out the rules, forget the cliches. This isn't about the perfect profile or the perfect date. It's about real connection. It's time to strip away the masks, shed the stories, and drop those old patterns that no longer serve you. Tired of dating advice that doesn't fit? So are we. Welcome to Stripped, Drop Your Patterns, where conscious dating isn't about following a script. It's about embracing your whole self and attracting the kind of love that sets your soul on fire. I'm Rachel J., the connection coach and your host. Let's get real. There's a pattern that shows up in nearly every early relationship, and once you understand it, you'll stop taking these dips so personally. For the first few weeks, everything is easy, it's light and fun. It's a high dopamine connection. You're both showing the shiny, curious, forward-facing parts of yourselves. There's momentum that doesn't require effort because essentially novelty is doing most of the work for you. But then somewhere around the 6 to 8 week mark, the chemistry settles. It doesn't disappear, it just stops being the primary driver. The nervous system finally gets a chance to breathe and integrate what's happening. And that's when the questions start surfacing, not consciously, mind you, but somatically. Do I actually like this person? Or do I just like the feeling and the excitement? Does this have potential to actually go somewhere real? Is this someone I could possibly build a future with? This shift from fantasy to reality often looks like a dip in communication or intensity. And it's not because something is wrong, but because you stop relating to the projection and begin relating to the person. And this is a completely typical shift at this phase of dating. Now that the shine has worn off a little, you are both beginning to assess if you're compatible, if your values are aligned, your goals, your interests, maybe even beginning to meet each other's social circles, which provides a lot of valuable information because you're seeing how they act in their natural habitat. So again, because I really want you to hear me when I say this, while it makes complete sense that it feels destabilizing, the dip in communication or intensity after several weeks of dating is normal and is a sign of natural progression. You are right where you're supposed to be. So this is what we're talking about today. Early dating has a natural elasticity to it, and I want you to think of it like a rubber band, right? So rubber bands have their natural state and shape, and you can stretch it, you can kind of pull it, and if you pull it too far, it's going to break. But if you release it before that happens, it will come back to its original shape, right? So at this phase of dating, after you have been closely engaged for a period of time, usually it's several weeks, the other person may pull away to start to take some space just to regain some autonomy or start to assess their true feelings for you. And I want you to really consider that you might also be doing this, right? You're starting to think like, okay, wait, where's this going? Do I actually see this person as long-term potential? So you are also doing this, but usually you don't notice it as much when it's you, or it's easier to justify when it's you, right? So this is a phase where the rubber band is kind of being stretched and pulled. But when you release the rubber band, or the person kind of comes back around, it's usually with more closeness and renewed interest. But if you push it too far, then that rubber band is going to break. So I want to emphasize this because most people misread it completely. That stretch and distance does not automatically mean withdrawal, but your body might interpret it that way because your previous experiences and self-protection mechanisms may start whispering worst-case scenarios. But in reality, the space is often nothing more than two humans integrating, settling, and trying to understand their own level of interest without the intoxicating haze of newness. So the real question becomes, can your nervous system tolerate that space without making up a story to fill it? Because when it can, you stay in the truth of what's happening. But when it can't, you start responding to your fear rather than the reality in front of you. And this is where things get tricky. Because when you feel that dip, your brain tends to collapse every possibility into one frightening interpretation, which is essentially they're losing interest. But there are actually two very distinct possibilities. One is that they're still interested. They simply got sick or busy or overwhelmed or, just needed a little natural space to think. Essentially, they are appropriately responding to this phase of dating. This happens constantly and is actually healthy, even though it feels counterintuitive. The other possibility is that their interest is naturally waning. People drift sometimes, and it's not because you did something wrong, but because alignment becomes clearer as time passes and you learn more about the other person. You're beyond that, again, surface level, intoxicating new novelty phase. So again, this is normal, and this is a time for you to also be assessing if this person is aligned for you. But here's the rub. When you are grounded, embodied, and not spiraling in your head, you can tell the difference almost immediately. Whereas when you're anxious or bracing for rejection, everything feels like evidence against you. This is why regulating yourself in these phases is so important, and it's not to manipulate the outcome, but to see it clearly. Because 9 times out of 10, the panic isn't really about the other person. It's about what their behavior is triggering in you. It's the story that says rejection means that you weren't enough, whatever that is. It's the story that says if someone pulls back, that something in you must have caused it. And it's the story that says love can disappear at any moment if you're not, quote unquote, perfect. Again, what does that even mean? This phase is usually where people fall into one of two survival patterns, both of which I want you to avoid. And the first is the performance of playing it cool, right? You know this one. It's pretending you don't care, matching their distance, acting breezy, unbothered, or aloof, telling yourself that you're playing it smart when really you're just abandoning yourself in a different direction. And if you're human, you're probably outsourcing your fear to your friends. But here's the thing about that. You can have the most loving, supportive friends in the world, and they will still respond through their nervous system, their history, and their wounds, their dating fatigue, and their cynicism, their well-intentioned protection instincts and definitions of red flags. They'll say things like, "You're too good for that, boy, bye," or "She's a tease, bro," because that's the paradigm that they have lived through. But you are doing something different. You listen to Stripped, and you are dating at the level of growth and nuance, not fear and defense. In that space, the work isn't to play it cool by withdrawing just because they pulled back, which of course quickly spirals into games and mirrored avoidance. The work is to stay anchored in yourself, to keep showing up as you, not as the defensive, guarded version of you who's trying to maintain the upper hand. Let that rubber band stretch without yanking on it. The second is the anxious pursuit, when you're trying to get clarity through subtle or not so subtle pressure. This could look like sending check-in texts that are actually desperate bids for reassurance. You may ask questions you don't actually want the answer to because you're really trying to just soothe the internal discomfort by keeping the conversation going however you can, rather than intentionally gathering information to try and get to know the person. or you might just brazenly call somebody out and ask for validation of their interest. So both of these moves, the playing it cool and, anxiously pursuing, are fear in different outfits, right? So you either come across as a disinterested game player or a stage 5 clinger. Both of these moves can cause the rubber band to stretch too far and ultimately break. But there is a middle path, and it's the one that I want you to practice. The middle path is staying rooted in your life, not to distract yourself, but to come back to your own center. Fill your time with the life that you are actively cultivating. Your friendships, your routines, your creativity, your purpose. Not to distract yourself, but to remember that your life is already full and rich, and you're choosing to add connection. You're not clinging to it as your only source of aliveness because you know that your nervous system doesn't hinge on one person. You don't experience their pullback as a threat to your identity. And from that place, the grounded, regulated, adult place, you can absolutely ask for clarity if things continue to feel out of sync. Because clarity is not neediness. Clarity is a gift for both of you. But it only lands well when it comes from steadiness rather than fear. When it's rooted in curiosity rather than accusation. When it sounds like, hey, I really enjoyed getting to know you and I want to check in about where we are. Instead of, why haven't you texted me back? Right? You feel that? This is the difference between dating from your wounds and dating from your worthiness. There's no pressure, no accusation, no self-abandonment. And when you give the other person the space that they've indicated they need, paired with the grounded emotional maturity, you give them a chance to reinvest their energy with you. Or, at the very least, to be honest about their level of interest. I want to share an example with you. This is a quick story about a man that I recently coached. And this is a man who is extremely thoughtful and successful and growth-oriented, but he's still human and he has his wounds. He recently went on a few dates with a woman who he had previously told me he was both physically and mentally attracted to. And this was a combination he hadn't experienced in a very long time, okay? Now, fast forward a few dates, and the vibes seemed to fizzle into the friend zone. He came to me the other day, clearly agitated because he had invited this woman out, and her response to his invitation was to mention their mutual friend, seemingly indicating that she was interested in a hang rather than a date as he had intended. And based on her response, he was ready to romantically write her off. Or was he? This exchange happened about a week prior to him asking for my feedback, which told me that his readiness to write her off was actually a fear-based reaction rather than an embodied feeling of misalignment with the woman. Otherwise, he wouldn't still be thinking about it and questioning it a week later. You feel me? So I encouraged him to simply ask her for clarity. Mind you, the conversation had continued in a very friendly manner, but the conversation about the date had dropped completely. So I'm going to put a pin in this and I'll come back to it. I want you to remember that when you're not reacting or performing or chasing, something really beautiful happens. People reveal themselves organically. You don't have to force clarity. It emerges if you're able to ask for it in a grounded, open way. So going back to my story, I encouraged this man to ask the woman for clarity, right? The message that we crafted together was along the lines of, yada, 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 tailing on the last thing that they had talked about. On another note, my intention last week had been to invite you out, but I got the impression from your response that you may be more interested in hanging out as friends? ? Open. So this phrasing gave her the opportunity to either rephrase and say that she would love to go out with him, or to feel safe enough letting him know that she's not romantically interested. And it turned out to be the latter. And guess what? He wasn't crushed. Now he was able to let it go happily and with clean energy and actual relief around it. Because the clarity that comes from both of them knowing what the dynamic is without the awkwardness of guessing or reading into or creating stories or just having those unresolved questions benefits them both. Sometimes just having an answer is all we need. So if someone is aligned with you, they naturally lean back in just like the rubber band. And if they're not, they drift. And your job is not to manage this. Your job is to stay connected enough to yourself that you can see what's true. And seeing what's true also means recognizing which cues are actual red or yellow flags that contradict your values or boundaries, and which cues are opportunities for growth. You can't build a healthy relationship with someone that you have to physically hold in place. They'll show you who they are. And even if it's not the result you were hoping for, again, having that clarity is liberating. So let's bring this out of your head and into your body for a moment. If you can, place a hand somewhere that feels stabilizing, like your chest, your ribs, the front of your shoulder, the top of your thigh. And again, if you can, gently close your eyes. Take a breath in through your nose. And let your exhale be long. Notice the sensation that's present when you think about early dating dips. Maybe a tightness, maybe a flutter, maybe nothing at all. Just a kind of alertness. Whatever shows up is welcome. And now quietly say, either internally or out loud, I let go of controlling the pace. What's aligned for me moves toward me naturally. I let myself be chosen without chasing. You are aligning your energy with self-trust, so you naturally attract people who match your frequency. And when your body relaxes, your energy becomes magnetic. And it's not because you're trying, but because nothing is being forced. So if you're in this phase right now, the uncertainty, the space, the dip, I want you to know that nothing is wrong with you. Nothing is broken. This is a completely normal part of early dating. And the way that you handle this moment sets the tone for every connection you build after it, which is why learning to stay grounded, to pause and breathe and check in with what feels true for you instead of jumping to react, is such a powerful skill. And if you want to go deeper into this work, the somatic grounding, the emotional leadership, the dating from self-trust instead of self-protection, you'll want to make sure you're on my email list, because I'm building something for those who want to date differently, and you'll want to be among the first to know when it opens. The link is in the show notes. Now, take one more breath with me before we go. Let it all go. You don't need to grip. You don't need to guess. You don't need to spin stories to fill that space. What is meant for you will move toward you, and what isn't will fall away with grace. I'll see you next time.